This week on the season premiere of BuzzFeed Unsolved, we look into the death of Edgar Allan Poe, a case as mysterious and macabre as the infamous writer's stories.
Jesus. Season premiere. I'm
That's how
enthusiastic. I don't know much about Edgar Allan Poe. I'm really bringing the energy this season.
That's good, that's good.
He wrote some fun yarns, a gloomy fella. Didn't know he had an untimely death, quite honestly. I don't know. Seems like a cool guy. They named a football team after him, sorta. They did. The Ravens. I didn't realize that till a few years ago. I was like,
I don't think they named it after...
The Baltimore Ravens.
They did not name that after.
Poe was from Baltimore.
Are you kidding me? Whoa! Whoa! Wait, are you kidding me? That's crazy.
Yes, that's the whole thing.
Holy I just thought they liked Ravens. I mean, Raven's a scary bird.
It is.
This is the second time we've talked about like a tortured artist type when we did Old Vincent back in the day.
Was Poe truly tortured?
He was a little tortured, I'd say.
He did kind of look the part.
Yeah, he kind of looks like what you're donning right now, facial hair-wise.
I don't hate to hear it. Don't hate to hear it.
Edgar Allan Poe was born on January 19, 1809, in Boston to a pair of actors, Elizabeth Arnold Poe and David Poe Jr. Within the first 3 years of his life, both his parents were dead, and the wee Poe was brought to Richmond to live with his presumed godfather, John Allan.
How do you get
Right
a presumed godfather?
I don't know. People get kind of fast and loose with that, right? What year is it?
It says 1809, 1809.
They got other stuff to worry about. TBs out there. They're like, yeah, so we definitely will pick a godfather, don't worry about it. Uh-oh, we're dead now.
In 1826, Poe enrolled at the University of Virginia, where he was an excellent student. Though John Allan was a wealthy tobacco merchant, he was also a tightwad who sent Poe to school with less than a third of the money needed. To try to make up for the shortfall, Poe started gambling. As you might expect, this strategy didn't quite pay off, and by the end of his first term, Poe was so poor he was burning his furniture to stay warm.
I think it's okay that John Allan wasn't just handing him piles of money. What does he want?
I mean, you could hand him the adequate amount.
No. Make him work for it. Make him strong.
Jesus Christ.
Well, I mean, you know, get him out there. Get him working. Get him burning his own furniture.
You know, I agree with you.
Teach him a few lessons.
The experience of losing both of his parents probably didn't make him strong enough.
I can walk back on some of this. Okay. I see what you're saying.
At this time, Allan was actually angry at the young student for gambling, while Poe was likewise upset at his godfather for refusing to contribute more to his education. With no other options, Poe was forced to drop out of school. Thus began a tumultuous time in Poe's life. Upon returning to Richmond, Poe discovered his fiancée, Elmira Shelton, had become engaged to another man. Despairing, Poe moved to Boston and enlisted in the U.S. Army to support himself so he could write. His godfather, however, then bought Poe's way out of the military, which was apparently something you could do. Poe then enrolled in West Point, only to be expelled 8 months later after making himself absent from all drills and classes for a week. With nowhere to go, Poe attempted to seek out his father's relatives in Baltimore, where he was promptly robbed by one of his cousins.
Bad cousin. That's rough.
This guy is being followed by a dark cloud.
Yeah.
It just seems like.
What do you do when life throws curveballs at you?
I don't know. Have a nice cry.
You film a gaunt season of BuzzFeed Unsolved Supernatural.
I have a nice cry. I make BuzzFeed Unsolved. That's what I do.
Finally, Poe fell into the care of his Aunt Maria Clem and established some semblance of stability. Poe started to publish poems. Around the time when he moved in with his aunt, Poe also began publishing short stories, one of which won a contest that grew his notoriety and led to an editorial position at the Southern Literary Messenger in Richmond.
Gotta feel good, right?
Yeah.
Win a contest? If all this happened to me, my life is just the pits, and then I won a contest, I'd be like, back on top.
Still feels like the scales have not tipped. But
yeah, but this is the beginning.
It is the beginning. It's the beginning.
This is a little pebble on the scale.
It's true. Night's darkest before the dawn.
Poe's luck was finally turning around. In addition to his newfound career traction, Poe had fallen in love with a girl named Virginia. Grossly, Virginia was his cousin. Even grosslier, Virginia was half his age. Despite these circumstances, Poe and Virginia married in Richmond in 1835 when Poe was 27 and Virginia was 13.
Can I say?
Yeah.
Can't be doing that.
You know, obviously, But it is a thing of the times.
You can't be doing that.
I mean, you see what I'm saying, though, right? It's
very easy to condemn from our vantage point in history, and so we do condemn wholeheartedly.
While their marriage was said to have been a happy one, it was also largely marked by money troubles.
You telling me she wasn't out there in the
I mean,
raking in the dollars as a a
13,
secretary somewhere or something?
turning in her finger paintings to City Hall,
Yeah.
getting a nice little quarter.
Poe continued moving about the eastern seaboard, piecing together different writing jobs, but finding it nearly impossible to make an adequate living. When his first collection of short stories, Tales of the Grotesque and Arabesque, which contained his famous story, The Fall of the House of Usher, was first published in 1840, Poe's pay wasn't even in money, but instead 25 copies of his own book. 5 years later, in 1845, the New York Mirror published Poe's poem, The Raven, which catapulted him to national acclaim.
5 years later?
5 years later.
Rough.
That's 5 years.
5 years ago, we started working at BuzzFeed.
I know. Imagine, or even 5 years later, imagine all we have to show for it is your video dogs watching TV for the first time.
It's a classic.
A copy of it, an MPEG.
It's a classic. I don't know why that is glued to every internet biography of me.
Because it's a
But it's
masterpiece.
always like, Shane Madej, a producer of Dogs Watch Television for the first time. It is a good video, for the record. Because those dogs do watch TV.
And that's all you have is that MOV file for 5 years. That's all you have to show for it. No money,
Not bad.
just a copy of the video.
A cat comes on screen and they're like,
For a brief period, Poe was finally living relatively comfortably. In the life of Edgar Allan Poe, however, tragedy was never far off. In the winter of 1847, Virginia died of tuberculosis at age 24. Poe was devastated, and literary critics assumed that Poe himself would be dead before long. In 2 years' time, they'd be proven right. By 1849, Poe was said to have embarked on a wild spree, presumably relating to alcohol abuse. By the summer, however, he'd made his way back to sobriety, back to Richmond, and back to his first fiancée, Elmira Shelton.
so is he going back to her now with like a copy of The Raven? Be like, how about this now, huh?
Would you give Elmira a second chance?
No.
You wouldn't?
No!
You don't believe in the capacity to forgive?
I mean, I would forgive, but I wouldn't forget.
They were soon and once again engaged, with plans to marry after Poe returned from some business in Philadelphia. On September 27th, Poe left Richmond by steamer, stopping the next day in Baltimore. For the next 5 days, Poe's whereabouts are unknown.
Easy to disappear back then, though, is the thing. Not hard.
Yes, it is easy. It was easier to disappear.
Nowadays, we got this surveillance
Yeah, surveillance state,
You know,
yeah,
You go
yeah.
to get your money out of the ATM, and they... I don't care. I'm on the internet, you know. Everybody sees me.
You're on famousbirthdays.com.
That's right. Where it says that I am the producer of Dogs Watch Television.
There it is. We're back.
On October 3rd, Poe was found by an employee of the Baltimore Sun, Joseph W. Walker, delirious, immobile, and dressed in shabby clothing. Poe was discovered in a gutter outside of a public house that was being used as a polling place.
What do you think about polls being in bars? Do you think that helps voter turnout?
Yeah, that's actually not a bad idea.
It is, right? I thought that was a pretty good idea, too.
It's pretty good. You got to get the kids out there. Oh my God. Register to vote.
This is a good time to say that.
Right
Yeah,
now?
we can do
I
that
know.
right now.
Look, be registered to vote. Talk to your friends about registering to vote. Scream at them.
And celebrate with a nice brewski.
Yeah,
If you're of
if
age.
you're
If you're
21.
over 21. Yeah.
It's a Poe essay.
Rapping at death's chamber door, Poe was taken to Washington College Hospital that afternoon. Assumed to be drunk, the weak and weary Poe was brought to a special room reserved for patients ill from intoxication. Poe never fully regained consciousness to be able to detail what had happened to him. Dr. John J. Moran wrote to Poe's aunt/mother-in-law, Maria Clem, that Poe's last days were filled with, quote, vacant converse with spectral and imaginary objects on the walls. His face was pale and his whole person drenched in perspiration, end quote. On October 7th, 5 hours past midnight dreary, at the age of 40, Edgar Allan Poe died. Some reports claiming he used his last breath to calmly say, quote, Lord help my poor soul, end quote. The official cause of death was phrenitis, or brain swelling. Poe was buried in a Baltimore graveyard 2 days later in an unmarked grave with little ceremony and nothing more.
It's a sad story, and hopefully that doesn't happen to any of us or the people we care about. I would hate to sweat for that long.
Which part? Not getting married or dying in a gutter? Or getting buried in an unmarked grave? All of the above?
Sure. Yeah, all of them. Yeah. I mean, if you don't want to get married, live your life. If maybe you don't have a significant other, it's not the end of the world. You know, find some hobbies. Just trying to make everybody feel good out there.
With Poe unable to explain what happened while in the hospital and no autopsy ever performed, theories abound regarding what happened to the famous Gothic writer. Today, we're going to address some of the most interesting ones. So without further ado, let's get into the theories. Our first theory is that Edgar Allan Poe died of some alcohol-related syndrome, such as dipsomania, alcohol dehydrogenase, or delirium tremens. Poe had a problem with alcohol.
Yeah. Sounds like it.
Yeah.
Not only did he possibly struggle with alcoholism, but it appears he was genetically predisposed to not be able to handle booze. According to Chris Sempner, curator of the Poe Museum, quote, "It has been documented that after a glass of wine, he was staggering drunk. His sister had the same problem. It seems to be something hereditary," end quote. Some say phrenitis may have been a common euphemism to politely attribute a death to alcohol. A few months before his death, Poe had a traumatic experience after becoming ill from drinking in Richmond. According to biographer Susan Archer Talley Weiss, Poe's doctor apparently warned him that, quote, "another such attack would prove fatal," end quote. This may have contributed to him becoming an active and vocal member of the temperance movement for the months leading up to his demise. If Poe had fallen off the wagon during his 5-day disappearance, that could have explained the disheveled and terminal state when he was found. Our second theory is that Poe was fatally beaten, perhaps after drinking. Since Poe would become inebriated after only one drink, he would have been an easy target for ruffians. Indeed, if Poe was beaten and robbed, that would explain his shabby state of dress, as Poe hadn't been known to wear ragged, cheap, ill-fitting clothes. There are even a couple theories that a potential beating would have been because of a woman. Biographer E. Oak Smith wrote in an 1867 article, quote, "At the instigation of a woman who considered herself injured by him, Poe was cruelly beaten, blow upon blow, by a ruffian who knew of no better mode of avenging supposed injuries. It is well known that a brain fever followed," end quote. In author John Evangelist Walsh's book from 2000, he posited that the brothers of Poe's again fiancée, Elmira Shelton, drugged Poe with alcohol and beat him to death. According to Walsh, Shelton's 3 brothers had warned Poe against marrying their sister. Walsh suggests that Poe had made it to Philadelphia, where he was ambushed by Shelton's brothers. Poe would have then disguised himself in shabby clothing and gone into hiding. Walsh contends that when Poe tried to sneak back to Richmond, Shelton's brothers would have found him in Baltimore, beaten him, and drugged him with alcohol, knowing it would have made him deathly ill.
This meek, well-dressed man who wears cloaks. If you wanted him dead, you didn't have to get it. He was like a weird little spindly man with a head the size of a pumpkin. You've seen him. Or maybe I'm just thinking of the Funko Pops.
Would you not want him?
Would I not want what?
Poe, as a brother-in-law.
No, I wouldn't. He's a weird, dour man. I would not beat him to death.
I can't even imagine you throwing a punch.
No, me neither. If I'm ever going to throw a punch.
I could only imagine you like backhanding somebody.
No.
like a lord.
It would be mid-conversation, and I'd maybe set it up a little bit. Like there's a great line from the OC where Ryan,
yes,
the main character who's like from the rough and tumble parts of,
yeah.
He says, "You know what I like about rich kids?" And the rich kid says, he's like, "Huh?" He goes, "Poof, nothing." And he walks away. That's what I do, baby. But I might kiss my fist first. I might be like, you know?
So your only fight that you've ever imagined is you sucker punching somebody?
Yeah, I'm a sucker puncher, all right. I'm a coward, baby.
This took a turn.
I would punch and
What
I'd
is
run.
happening?
I'd run real fast.
Where am I going? I got you.
Then I'd get on a train and I'd move to a different city and I'd change my name.
Our third theory is Edgar Allan Poe was the victim of cooping, a violent form of voter fraud that was extremely common in Baltimore at the time. Cooping was when gangs would kidnap a victim and force him to vote multiple times in a variety of disguises.
Strange.
That's
Strange when crimes were like this.
just walking in there with a little Groucho Marx mustache.
Yeah, very
on.
odd.
Yeah, it's weird. It's a weird time.
Also, it's a crime, and yet these people need to have some sort of trunk full of disguises.
They're walking around with a carrot top truck.
Like hardened criminals be like, "We got you now. Put on this feather boa."
Okay, now the pink number. Put that
The pink.
Put that one on.
That one with the spaghetti straps. I like that.
Could you audition those glasses? I don't know if that frame fits.
On, off, glass.
You know what? Let's go with the other one.
Funny little top hat.
I was right the first time I overthought it.
This was good. This was good character work for us. Let's keep going.
This theory makes a lot of sense, as it explains why Poe was not in his normal clothes and why he was found outside of a polling place. During this time, voters were often given some alcohol after voting as a celebration. Because of Poe's genetic sensitivity to alcohol, if he had been forced to vote several times, thus having to drink multiple drinks, it could have explained the drunken stupor he was discovered in. Biographer J.H. Ingram during the late 1870s received several letters that caused him to believe this was how Poe met his demise. A member of the faculty at Johns Hopkins, William Hand Brown, wrote Ingram saying, quote, "The general belief here is that Poe was seized by one of these gangs, cooped, stupefied with liquor, dragged out and voted, and then turned adrift to die." End quote.
If you're gonna kidnap someone to coop them,
Yes.
wouldn't you want to? I don't know how recognizable he was, but maybe don't pick
Edgar
a
Allan
world-famous
Poe.
author.
Yeah, I don't think these people were beating up Edgar Allan Poe, and then one of them stopped midway and was like, "Wait a second, this dude wrote The Raven."
This guy wrote Fall of the House of Usher. Haven't you guys ever read that? It's incredible.
It's a beautiful story. You know what? I'm sorry, man. Get up.
We love your prose.
Yeah.
We're sorry about
We're really
this.
good. We'll take it easy. I don't think that's what happened. I think it was just he was a guy.
Yeah, okay.
Our final theory is that Edgar Allan Poe died as the result of a brain tumor, which could have explained his odd behavior in the days leading up to his death. Though Poe was buried in an unmarked grave 2 days after he died, 26 years later, a statue was erected to honor his gravesite, during which his coffin was dug up so his remains could be exhumed. I use the term honor loosely, as the marker lists his birthday as January 20th, the day after Poe was actually born.
They tried to remedy their mistake from before with the unmarked grave, and then they
Beefed it.
They beefed it real hard.
Beefed it. Literally etching it in stone. You don't want to double check that?
I guess not.
Imagine if your headstone said like, Ryan Bergara, loving wife.
I mean, yeah, sure.
You
I
wouldn't
guess.
care?
Yeah, I mean, I'm dead, so.
Yeah, I mean, you know my outlook on things. It's like, whatever. Leave me in the street for the dogs to pick at my bones.
That's another thing too. I've always wondered with graves, like when people leave things at the grave, like flowers or even like food or things that they liked.
Yeah.
If you die, isn't your grave like one of the last places you'd want to go check out?
I mean, that's where your body is. Maybe your spirit
I
was. I mean,
suppose.
a Dia de los Muertos. It's like the cemeteries become like a fun.
That is true.
I saw Coco.
It's just I don't want to hang out at a cemetery if I'm coming back to Earth to
But the
check
cemetery
things
should be
out.
a happy place. Let's make
Maybe.
them happy places.
I'm just saying that most times ghosts haunt the house that they were in or where they died. They don't
or
go
wherever's convenient for the story. Yeah, I know.
there. Rip that mustache off your face.
I'd love to see you try.
Understandably, Poe's coffin and corpse were in terrible condition. As workers tried to move the coffin, it fell apart, spilling Poe's remains.
This guy can't catch a break.
This is comical at this point. Like
It's what you get for marrying your 13-year-old cousin.
Jesus, man, you can't say that.
I can't
Man,
say
you
that.
can't
Oh,
say
I
that.
can't say that.
I don't know if that's fair.
You can't say that.
I don't think it's fair.
How dare you judge him for marrying his 13-year-old
It was
cousin?
historically accepted at the time.
I don't care. I
can-
judge thee.
I could say that without condoning it.
I judge.
Workers noted that there was a mass rolling around inside the poet's skull. At the time, news articles reported it was Poe's brain, quote, dried and hardened in the skull, end quote, claiming, quote, the cerebral mass evidenced no sign of disintegration or decay, though, of course, it is somewhat diminished, end quote.
Is that what happens to the brain?
I have no idea.
That's gnarly, man.
I do not think the brain hardens into a funny little ball. I don't think that's what happens.
Wouldn't it be funny if a funny little mouse came out?
I guess.
However, if there truly was a mass remaining in Poe's skull, it is unlikely to have been his brain. Soft brain tissue would have been some of the first to decay after Poe's death. It is much more likely any mass would have been a tumor, which could have calcified and hardened after the death. Expert testimony also suggests Poe had been told earlier in his life by a doctor that he believed Poe had a lesion on his brain that explained his adverse reaction to alcohol.
Well, I will say that the tumor does explain a lot of things. It makes things make more sense because like all of the sobering up and all that stuff, it was, you know, it was all nullified by the fact that he just had a tumor. That's why he wasn't getting any.
I mean, they also said he was talking to specters in his final hour. You know, it could have explained some.
We talk to specters all the time.
Could explain some hallucinations or things that might not actually be there.
Well, his hallucinations weren't caught on camera.
His what?
His hallucinations weren't caught on camera.
Hallucinations? You idiot.
Unbelievable. This is not the season to talk about ghosts.
As you may have noticed, none of our theories rules out the others. Edgar Allan Poe may very well have been beaten and kidnapped in a cooping scheme, sent to a stupor with alcohol after voting, and unable to recover due to a brain tumor, or any combination thereof.
Wow, that's fun. I mean, sad, but we've never had, have we ever had?
A theory, a case where the theories kind of serve as like a Mad Lib of sorts. Where
Or like, yeah, where all theories are possible, but could also all have contributed.
happened at the same time.
Yeah, interesting.
Other theories, such as rabies, the flu, carbon monoxide poisoning, syphilis, epilepsy, cholera, and many others have also been posited. Though Poe was beginning to attract the literary credit he deserved, he could not have known the impact his Gothic tales of the macabre and mysterious would have, or that an annual prize for excellence in mystery, the Edgar Award, would be named after him, cementing his legacy evermore. With no autopsy and no official death certificate ever found, what caused the death of Edgar Allan Poe, one of America's most famous authors and poets, will likely remain unsolved.
I will say the clothes thing does make me kind of give a little bit more credence to the cooping theory, in the sense that that involved disguises. Though you could also say the clothes were the result of getting into a drunk altercation and people robbing him.
But also, who's keeping tabs on which clothes he owns?
Well, it was that.
Maybe he had some raggedy ones that he never wore that often and was like, oh, I'll take these traveling.
I feel like if you showed up to work one day in raggedy, ill-fitting clothes, well, actually, that would be kind of conducive to who you are right now. Because, I mean, you said yourself, your goal in your 30s is to look weird.
It is.
So actually, that was a bad example. But anybody else that's normal, it would be weird if they all of a sudden showed up in things that didn't make sense.
I'm different.
I guess it's just unsolved.
I guess so.